Well, welcome to KUEST Leadership Live. Man, I am excited about the show that we have for you today with my good friend and going to come on here in just a minute and talk about coaching. Lamont Coleman. Cannot wait to get into this conversation with him. So stick around while we go to KUEST Leadership Live. All right. Well, we're here on KUEST Leadership Live. So excited that you joined us here today. As I said a minute ago, my good friend and special guest today is Lamont Coleman. He is, wow, we talk about a history of leadership and of coaching. LC has that absolutely in his back pocket. He's a married man, been married for 15 years, has a beautiful family, 2 amazing kids that are just awesome, awesome wife. He has a bachelor's of education from the Ohio State University, a master's in business. He's also been a part of the Dolphins organization for the last 3 years, the Florida Marlins as a guest experience manager, helping to train the team there in hospitality and customer service, to top notch on those things. He is the vice president of the NFLPA, Former Players Association. Played college ball at Slippery Rock, and which is it was All-American there in Pennsylvania, and then 2 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the '95 AFC Championship team. And there's a lot more about what he's done and his experience as a coach that he can tell you. So I want you just to welcome right now my good friend, Lamont Coleman. LC, it's good to have you on the show today.
Tom, it's a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
Man, absolutely. I know I missed some stuff in there, dude. I mean, that's quite the list. Why don't you hit us? What are some highlights from your career that maybe I didn't mention in there that have been just a huge part of your personal experience and your personal journey?
Well, as it pertains to the show, I had a chance I never really wanted to coach at first. I always wanted to be a neck up guy where I was either the owner or administrator. So, as you already know, in our great hometown of Marion, Ohio, having the pleasure to lead young men in an indoor arena football team for 5 years as the Marion Blue Racers pro football team. So on and off, I had to wear many hats as the CEO, president, and even in 2014 was the coach of the year after our head coach had to step down. So a lot of experience when it comes to with coaching and coaching effectiveness. And I think that I would love to participate in this great topic because I have a lot to say about it.
Well, I was thinking as you were talking there about how we first met. You were the owner, head coach, all of that of the GM of the Marion Blue Racers. You wore that hat for 5 years. You were also part of the Mayhem prior to that. But that's where we first met. We got connected in a phone conversation as we had just come back to pastor here in town, the church that we're pastoring now. And in that conversation, I'll never forget it on the phone, you and I we connected. Yes. And then we went after that, we met up, I think you mentioned at Ralphie's here in town for our first official meeting.
That's right.
I came on as a chaplain to the team. And man, you talk about some awesome experiences. I absolutely loved our journey together, getting to meet with the team every week and pray in the locker room before you go out to play. What an awesome experience, man. Some good times.
It really was. I mean, the one thing I wanted to do is make sure that as the owner, as a person, a leader in town, that we were affiliated with a church home, and we had that spiritual guidance. And for 5 straight years, I don't care if we left town 3 o'clock in the morning or we started at 7 o'clock at night, your faithfulness and your commitment to the team by leading us before we go out in that field with spiritual guidance, covering, and prayer. We appreciate you.
Man, it was fun. Thank you for letting me be a part of that experience. And, forged a friendship. Here we are today talking about an incredibly important conversation, navigating through life, encouraging each other, as we raise our families and do what God's called us to do and impacting this next generation. Man, I can't thank you enough for being on. And I want to start with a story that you told. We talked a couple years ago about the topic of coaching. And the whole idea today that I kind of want to get across to everyone is the value and the importance, the critical nature of the voice of a coach in the life of a young leader. Now, when we say coach, LC, in the KUEST context, we're not just talking about sports coaching. We're talking about anybody. That's a mentor, a teacher, a voice in the life of a parent, a voice in the life of a young student. Specifically, this show is tailored to help those who are engaged in the KUEST system to really leverage their coaching opportunity in the lives of these kids. But what we've learned is that while we've developed all kinds of resources, books, journals, processes, all those things, engagement for young students, that it really comes down to the quality of the coach that makes the difference in their development. I mean, you're talking about elementary age students who are learning to use their gifts and talents and engage in serving their community inside the community of their relationships. And that coaching voice is paramount for their development. And you told a story a couple of years ago, I'd love for you to reflect on, of your interaction with your coach. I believe it's Slippery Rock, right? I believe it was your senior year. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that story was, what that voice meant to you, and the path that it set you on?
Oh, absolutely. It's very easy. Just celebrating 30 years of friendship and mentorship with Dr. George Mahalik, who has stepped down from coaching a few years ago, but he's an inspirational person that's in my life, and I've always called my second dad, even when my dad was still alive, because the guidance, the permission to even come back to the university. And how it started was, I was just, back then, I don't think they called them Power 4, Power 5, but I was I had a nice name for myself coming out of high school and ended up having a Proposition 48. For those that don't know what that is, the colleges have a certain entrance bar for academics and passing the SAT, and I failed to meet those requirements. And so all those division offers kind of went astray. But Dennis Whiston, who was a former Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steeler, he basically told me that this coach wanted me here no matter what. So I ended up going to Slippery Rock in 1990, had like all C's, left there. And then after I went to JUCO, played baseball, he allowed me to come back in 92 and said, hey, you're going to have to wait a year, but I believe in you. You're a big name. We're going to have to get you acclimated to college life. But as soon as he told me I could come back, he personally took me under his wing, invited me to his house, started guiding me and telling me about football. But football was just basically a microcosm of all the things that I was going to incorporate myself into life, because he was the only, first of all, I'm Black, he's white, and I grew up in the projects of Pittsburgh. And so I didn't have anybody that looked like him, sound like him, and have that high of education that knew how to talk to me and knew how to get the most out of me. And so from 92, 93, and 94, his values and my morals, he basically helped shape those.
Wow.
No cursing policy, curfew, things like that. And so he was able to drive home the understanding of education, family, community first before football. And that kind of sparked a relationship, because it became the cornerstone of how I wanted to be as a man.
Wow. So in that experience, right, you're coming in, your sounds like your world is being a little turned upside down in terms of what you expect of yourself, right?
Yes.
And the voice that he's using to speak into you in those moments. And you talked about how, I think it was your senior year, an experience that you had with him specifically, where you were at his house hanging out. I think you were watching the Super Bowl. Tell us a little bit about what happened in that moment.
Yeah, so as a Division II player with Division I ability, you don't have these experiences. Every senior goes through this for the first time. So I was allowed to babysit the small ones. That's how much trust and love there was. Yeah. But one night he invited me over, and we were watching Super Bowl 29. I'll never forget it as long as I live. And I'm looking at them. I'm looking at the teams. I'm looking at the speed. And I'm like, Coach, man, what a dream it would be to play in the biggest game in the world, man. And he paused, and I got little goosebumps right now. I just got a little goosebumps right now because that moment, sorry.
Oh, it's good, man.
That moment impacted my life forever because he told me something. He told me something that no one's ever told me. He said, I believe you can play with the best. I know that you can do great things. And I'll see you in the Super Bowl next year. And then, I work out with a number of teams, end up signing with Pittsburgh. And God be the glory.
Yeah.
I was on that Super Bowl 30 team the following year. We came up a little short, but everything this man has said to me has come true. And, it's tears of joy, really, because I don't know what I've done with Dr. Mahalik over the last 30 years. He means that much to me as a man, as a father. And so when you talk about the voice of reason and the voice of leadership, he didn't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
He laid a pathway of options like, hey, if you go this way, it may turn out this way. Or if you go that way, it'll turn out that way. But you as a young man got to start making these decisions on your own. So he just means the world to me, Tom.
Golly, I mean, it's obvious to hear you tell that story and the passion that you obviously feel in that moment. I mean, there's a reason our emotions tell us a story, right?
Right.
And for you to feel the depth of that moment still here today, obviously speaks volumes to what it meant to you and what that voice meant to you. I want you to imagine we don't have the luxury of being able to what I call A-B our lives, meaning we don't get the chance to live A and then go back and live B and see how it would have been different. Well, I'd love for you just to climb into your imagination for a second and just think about what difference it would have been for you had he chosen to not speak in that moment and simply say those words of encouragement to you there as you're watching the Super Bowl together and speak that life into you as a coach, use his voice in that way. How much of a difference that could have made in the trajectory of your life.
Man, I mean, I had doubt, like every player. I don't care if you play at Penn State, Ohio State, much less Slip Rock University. If it wasn't for his guidance at that time, and I had just become another part of the meat factory, what people call NCAA football, I don't know where I'd have gone because I was grasping for straws. Like he still has a university and the next group of guys coming in.
Yeah.
But his house, his phone, his cell phone was always at speed dial. And so he helped shape his words and his emotions and him opening his house. It gave me almost like an airplane coming home at midnight and you need those lights to show the runway. He gave me he gave me that illuminated pathway, and that confidence and increasing my self-efficacy as a man, as a player, and as a man of God, that somebody believes in me because no one gets anywhere unless somebody says that I believe you can do it.
Man, dude, it's so powerful. And I love that visual too of the runway lights. My goodness. Phenomenal. Take that idea and just kind of break it out for us because, the coaches that we train and we certify through KUEST and all of that may be involved on a sports level. They may have students that go on to careers like you're talking about. But in a lot of cases, we're talking about just simply shaping and molding the future of a good dad, of a good mom, a good business owner, a teacher someone's going to grow up to be a teacher or a coach themselves. When you think about that experience with Doctor there and all it meant to you, how do we break that down for those who are listening today and that are part of this KUEST system? What does it mean? What do they need to be watchful for? What needs to matter for them as they're interacting with their students?
Absolutely. And, whether it's the classroom or wartime, the number one component to human beings being able to interact is communication. And you have to be somewhat of an effective. Everyone's not the best orator, but you have to have communication. you either have to be, I think it's two parts. You got to be able to communicate, and you got to have good active listening skills, because if somebody wants something or wants to do something, for example, someone says that they want to be a doctor, but for those out there that understand the medical world, if you want to be a doctor and you came in, or you want to be a nurse, let's just say you want to be a nurse, but you can't pass the T's, the test that shows that you have enough knowledge on science and math, then you have to show them almost like another option along your path. So you have to hear what people are trying to do, understand the route, but also give them other opportunities. So shoot for the stars, and hopefully you'll end up amongst the clouds.
No, it's really good. And I love that dynamic you're talking about there. It would have been easy for Coach Mulholland to dismiss even what you were saying, to give you platitudes and say, oh man, that's a good dream, LC, you go for it. Just try hard and maybe you'll end up there. But that's not what he did.
No.
He heard what you were saying, and he threw fuel onto the fire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even at that time, there's two things I didn't really understand until later in life. Number one, and I'm not asking, obviously we want our young men and women to do well in school so they have as many options. But coaching a kid up, as a counselor, as a teacher, as a coach, understanding that we got to know the pitfalls if a young man or woman didn't meet their goal. Like, for instance, tap into what they know, tap into their wants and desires. Like, I wanted to play baseball or football. Yeah. And so I didn't have the grades, but nobody within the educational realm told me that if you want to be able to still get a big time scholarship, you need to go to a 2-year school. You need to kind of like start over, work on your math, science fundamentals, and there'll be a team to concentrate on what you don't do well. So it'll basically fortify what you don't do well. So when the Iowas and Ohio States are ready to come get you, then you'll have that substance. Because a guy like me, I wasn't really good at math, and I didn't want to study. All I cared about was sports. Yeah. And we can get into the whole social strata for another show. But sure, yeah. I think that's what it was, is that me having an understanding that what are my options. And I wondered about it. I did go to JUCO, but I didn't know that that's where a lot of the schools are looking to grab those players who weren't ready to go when they were ready to hand out scholarships.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. And, I think I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think I remember in that conversation you and I had originally on this story and this topic that you had mentioned one of the things he said to you was, you're going to have to work hard. But if you work hard, you've got this opportunity in front of you. Absolutely.
And that came, nutrition, education, staying out of trouble. It's amazing, today, how many young men and women don't understand the fact that it's not the glitz and glamour. It's all the things that people are doing when the camera's off, when nobody else is looking. Are you studying your craft? Are you putting in the extra hours? Are you looking at videos? And so the work was hard. The work was extremely hard to be. Yeah. I was the only rookie running back on the team. They got rid. It was all veterans. So understanding that anything I tried to accomplish, Coach Mahalik was telling me that, hey, you're still on scholarship, you're still part of the team, but don't look at the office as you're not part of the team anymore. So come in here and look at film, use the gym, but most importantly, talk to people who've been there so you can actually start to train your mind of all the things you're trying to do, because you can't do things the collegiate way anymore. You have to understand what this big business is what they want out of you, because like they say, the NFL is not for long.
It's interesting because what I'm hearing in all of this is it's a perspective that the voice of that coach brings that isn't solving all the problems for you,
right?
But is pointing out what's in you for solving the problems.
Yes. Yes.
To connect the power you have to the solution you need.
Absolutely.
I don't hear, and I hear this from as I talk to other coaches and stuff. One of the consistent things that I hear is I don't hear a bunch of answers. I hear a bunch of like, the only way I can think to put it is just digging stuff up. That's what coaches do. It's just like, we're going to turn this thing over because the gold is in you. So if I give you gold, it's not the same as if you discover the gold that's inside of you. And it's like they're constantly just churning stuff up in you that make you go, maybe I can do it. Maybe I do have it, but I got to go after it myself, and giving you the tools to do that. You know, when we think about the current situation that we're in our nation, there are a couple of fronts on this for me that I feel like the timing of what KUEST is all about, what we do, and especially the idea of helping to bring up teachers, mentors, coaches, leaders that are impacting the next generation. I don't think the timing could be better for this movement. And by better, I mean the environment that we're in is ripe for these voices in our lives. We need these voices more than ever in the next generation, in the lives of the next generation, for a lot of reasons. One is this, that there just are so many profound obstacles in front of our kids, things that they must overcome. Not the least of which is the one that we are, and I say currently, I said this last week in this show. I said, we talk about recent events, but these aren't just recent events. These are repeated events. These are events that have been around for a very long time. We talk about the hatred that we're seeing today, the racism that we're feeling today. These are not new things. They're stirred again, but it's not like they weren't there in the first place. They've been there. But creating a dialogue, even around incredibly difficult topics. And when I say difficult, I mean they're emotionally difficult to have in some cases, but they're also intellectually difficult in some cases. Talked about on the recent broadcast that I did, the idea of preparing to talk to your kids about racism. And just, I didn't talk at all about the truth of it, because I think that's a much broader conversation that I don't know everything. But here's what I do know, that if I am going to talk about it, I need to study it first. If I am going to talk about it, I got to push past cliche and get to truth. How I prepare as a coach is just as important as anything that I actually might say to a student. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on preparing for those difficult conversations. You shared right prior to this show today, and you don't have to share it here if you don't want, but you shared a difficult conversation you had to have with your own son about playing sports in this current environment, how hard that is as a dad and as a coach. But you take a topic like racism, which we both agree must not just be talked about. Action must be taken, not just talked about, but we have to begin in that conversation. What encouragement you come out of the experience you had with Coach Mahalik, and what do you draw from that? How do we coach and speak to our kids about these types of topics and really get truly tractionable dialogue going?
Absolutely. That's a great topic. So, before everyone, our society really operates like they're driving through Wendy's drive-through or McDonald's drive-through. They want to order what they want at one window, and they want a perfect bag. They want the salt, they want the pepper, and the ketchup. They want a perfect meal in the next window. That just that fast. And we get the understanding that fast food has been around for a long time, but we can't fix problems in a nanosecond.
That's good.
And we want actionable steps without the professional discourse. So when a coach wants to, if a coach has a philosophy, if he wants 80 men, 100 men, 100 women to all understand the standing operating procedures of how we're going to go forward, one coach just can't have a relationship with that player. That coach needs to let his team, his lieutenants know that, hey, Lamont Coleman's having an issue. He's having a problem because I might not be able to connect with LC. It may be the coach that doesn't even coach me on the other side of the ball, because of race, because of socioeconomic status, whatever it may be. So sometimes we'll know we have a problem and we won't share it amongst the people that can't help. That's one thing. And two, when you're talking about these, somebody came to me the other day. One of my buddies, he owns a very big company, and he called me from out of town. He has 10,000 employees, and basically he had to let 1,000 off, but they wanted to know, what can we do to basically be part of the fight? I said, well, number one, you have to know the history. You have to know the problems. You have to know what the issues are. And to me, it expands more than just black and white, because there's other people that have been affected. So I really feel as if that in order to have these conversations, number one, I think you gotta start with ground rules, because you know, race or religion and politics, and especially racial relations, you have to understand what that person's trying to get out of it. So we have to agree. We have to touch and agree and say, hey, let's go with facts and not opinion first. Okay. What do you know about this topic? And then that's when you start to use your background or personal experiences, because I'm blessed that I've seen a lot of racism in this world, and so have you. But I have to now talk to my own race, own black brothers and sisters and women, because I've never had police. I've never I've never had any experiences where I had to deal with police brutality. I've never been called the N-word. I've dated outside my race from the age of 17 to almost 30 years old. And I've never had any type of negative energy from anyone or anything that would be close to racism. So even as a black man, there are issues and concepts going on in this world that I can't even tell my own son that I've experienced, thank God. But I do understand that there's a stigma and stereotype that's placed on me as a man because I'm trapped in the skin that I'm in. Yeah.
Well, now what I'm hearing you say in that was so profound. Just that the whole idea you're walking through there is, as coaches, especially in the situations where we're walking through these types of topics, and this topic in particular with our students, is to ask questions.
Yes.
Is to explore, what do you know? What have you experienced? You know, I recently read an article about the power between compartmentalization and internalization.
Okay.
That when some people see an incident, so for me, for example, for myself, I may see the most recent incident with George Floyd, and I can compartmentalize that as wrong, as violent, as unacceptable, as immoral, as all these things. I can see that and name it and call it those things and compartmentalize it. But in the end of the day, I probably walk away not thinking that's ever going to happen to me. But then there are those who see that moment and internalize it, and they feel all the same things that I would feel about the hatred and the violence and how it's wrong and morally unacceptable. But there's an internalization that happens that says, I could see that could be me. And it changes the game in how that information gets processed. So asking those types of questions, how do you see it? You think about coaching a student through the conversation. I recently went through this and watching and observing one of our classrooms. And a moment came up where their student was sharing very intimately some things that were going on in their lives within their family. And as they expressed what they were feeling, it was the perfect opportunity right there for that coach, that teacher, to stop and say, talk to me about how that makes you feel. Talk to me about how you're internalizing that. What's your perspective? Because they didn't have it. That's not something they've ever experienced.
Right.
Yet this student is going through this crisis, and the value of just asking, tell me about what that means to you. That's what I'm hearing you say in that, getting that, mining for that information and perspective.
Man, as soon as you said that, I'll tell you the first thing, I'll touch upon that. The first thing I thought about having that person talk about their experiences and talking them through it is just, I guess, right before you start making those comments and very valid points. I'm gonna give you an example.
Okay.
Imagine like I said, I've never had a bad traffic stop. So now I'm driving with somebody who looks like me, who's had multiple bad driving stops, and now he gets pulled over. I'm in the passenger seat. He's shaking. He's nervous. He's fumbling stuff. He can't find the stuff. He's worried. He's calling his mom. He's saying, oh my God. And I'll look at him and go, brother, what's wrong? Man, it's about to go bad. And so because I haven't, even as a black man, I've never shared that.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I feel as if that asking those questions are so huge, because I get asked all the time.
Yeah.
I get asked all the time, what's the best way to go about this?
Yeah.
There is no one gave me the racism 101 talk book. Okay. No one gave me that. But I do feel as if that, like you said, asking those questions first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And letting them know that this doesn't have to be a one-part conversation, because I think, like I said, about the whole drive-through society, we want to ask the question and we want to have a quick fix right now so we can take this knowledge and go out into the world. And I just don't think it happens that fast. It has to be a reoccurring conversation, knowing that you can come back to me anytime to discuss.
You know, you think about this, just what you're saying here is so incredibly powerful, because I think about Coach Mahalik and what he did for you. And the moment where he says to you, speak to your reality and uses his voice to say, I can see you there, which changes the game for you, right? Just that moment began years before, when you were given a shot to even play.
That's correct.
To even come and be on the team. And so there's a level of investment and engagement that has a long-term mentality connected to it. Mm-hmm. To your point, I think sometimes in the rush to fix, we miss the underlying foundation that must be there for change to be long-term. Yeah. In other words, if you just throw that answer in it's like we need a stronger foundation of relationship, of understanding, of discourse, as you mentioned there. And that's a pattern that I see as you're telling these stories and I hear from others. That's a pattern I see in strong coaching.
Absolutely. Because with coaching, relationships equal entrustment.
Yes.
Because without the relationship, you can't ask me to trust. No stranger will go up to you and say, hey, you trust me? No, I don't trust you. You know?
It's good.
So I trust, Coach. I trust that you're making me go to study hall. Yeah, Coach, I got a 2.5. But on this team, if you don't have a 2.7, you have to go to study hall. Why? Because when you're ready to go get that job, I want you to go compete and feed your family. Oh, Coach, man. So you got to trust. I got to trust the coach while we're up at 5 a.m. in the gym. Because guess what? When you meet your arch nemesis, you'll realize why you're up at 5 o'clock when it's fourth quarter, game on the line. We got to entrust. When we go to church, we got to entrust our pastor that God blessed him with those scriptures that's going to affect my life. Because when I read my devotions, it's not just for me. I got goosebumps. It's not just for me. It's for me to take the word of God with somebody. If somebody's going through racial tension, a pandemic, homelessness, whatever it may be, is to be able to use a soundbite. I need to be a soundbite to that person that trusts me based off the relationship. So if I say I read this and the Lord told me to speak this to you about trust, about getting through that certain ordeal, I need that foundation and relationship. So that person goes, you know what? I believe in him. And the same way I believed in Coach when he believed in me a year out from me actually signing an NFL contract.
Yeah, Elsie, I can't tell you, man, how valuable and important this conversation is. I really, really can't. I think that these things become, what I'm seeing is that this is the key, the impact that we are believing to have on the next generation, that we are the key to it. They won't naturally develop themselves. They will naturally develop, but we have an opportunity to influence that development by doing exactly what you're saying here, building a relationship, recognizing that the things that we experience and know are far beyond just for us, but it's for those that we have an influence over, and that we have to be willing to be that voice, to have those tough conversations, to build out that discourse, to have understanding and an open mind and an open ear, so that we can encourage to the greatness that's inside of the students that we're leading. I want to give you a final word here. I mean, it's hard to wrap this up. I got to be honest. We can go on and on. But I want to give you a final word here, a chance to encourage all of the coaches that I know are going to go back and watch this again and again, just with some encouragement about their role as a voice in the life of a young student, why it's important, and just anything you feel like you want to kind of lay on them as we close out today.
Well, I would just want to say that, for all the coaches out there, coaches, leaders, anyone in the administrative capacity that actually has their hands and their voice connected to a team, a young person, or even employers that are working with adults, is that just make sure that you always start with an open door policy. Let them know that you're going to be fair but firm and honest, and being able to not be a micromanager. Sometimes we got to let our people fail, but let them know that you, as the coach or the administrator, that you're that life hook. I'm going to be here for you, and you can't tell that to an employee or coach or staff member or a player enough. I will always be here for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. This is just some gold there. Really appreciate it. I appreciate our relationship. Thank you for being on here today.
My pleasure.
This won't be the last conversation, so count on that. But give your family all our love. And thank you for being here with us on the broadcast. And may I look forward to future conversations. Keep up the good work, and keep praying for us as we keep trying to impact the next generation. Thank you, LC.
Thank you. Great job with KUEST Academy, Mr. FLC family. Tell everyone in the Tony family I say hello, miss you, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you, LC. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
So you can see why I was so excited today about having my friend on here and talking about this topic. We could go on and on, but I want to encourage you as you continue to coach, just to keep digging into that relationship. Don't be afraid to have the tough conversations. Do your homework. Know your students. Know their background, their history. Get to know them. I love what LC said there about recognize that if there's a relationship that's outside of your ability to influence the way you know it needs to, there may be someone else that will connect even better with those students. But it's all about helping them develop and become and discover the greatness that's inside of them. So guys, keep it up. Keep coaching. I can't wait to see you next week here on KUEST Leadership Live.